Critical theory, what is it? If you've been doing some reading or you've been sat in a research seminar and people have been throwing around words like ideology, hegemony, resistance, domination, emancipation, oppression, and you've wondered, what are they actually talking about? How does all of that stuff fit together? Then you are not alone. Critical theory is one of those things that gets talked about a lot in social science, but it is rarely explained in a way that makes sense to somebody who hasn't got a philosophy degree. So let's sort that out today. I'm Dr Elizabeth Yardley, and I'm here to help you understand that when it comes to finishing your PhD, there is no big secret. No magic formula, no trickery, no hacks. It's simply a process of identifying the next step, taking the next step, and then figuring out what the step after that is. And here on my YouTube channel, I'm going to help you out with that. In this video, I'm going to walk you through what critical theory is in plain English. Okay, this is a jargon-free zone. We're going to look at what it is, how it's useful, and whether or not you should apply it to your PhD. And like I said, no jargon, no gatekeeping, just straightforward stuff. So first up, what is critical theory? At its heart, critical theory is a way of thinking about the world that asks, why are things the way that they are? And more importantly, who benefits from that setup? It's all about power and inequality and the ways in which certain people and certain systems maintain control, often without the rest of us realising it. Critical theory grew out of a group of scholars known as the Frankfurt School in the 1930s. They were grappling with some really big questions about capitalism, about inequality, and they weren't satisfied with the theories that were around at the time that simply explained the world. They wanted to find ways to change it. And that's the really key central idea here. Critical theory isn't a neutral, detached observer. Critical theory is political. It's about identifying injustices and inequalities and things that are wrong with the world and imagining and proposing something better. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to be storming the barricades to engage with critical theory in your research, but it does mean thinking critically, thinking skeptically about the systems and the structures around us and how they shape the topic that you're studying. Isn't critical theory just about being critical? Not in the way that we often use that word in everyday life. It's not about being grumpy or nitpicking, it's about looking beneath the surface. Critical theory assumes that knowledge and truth aren't these neutral, objective, unchangeable things. They are shaped by social forces, by political forces, by cultural forces. So, if you're doing research that challenges the dominant or the mainstream way of thinking about things, or looks at issues of race, class, gender, sexuality, then there's a good chance that critical theory has got something to offer to you. Another core idea of critical theory is that power isn't something that people just have. It's also embedded in institutions, in everyday practices. It is woven into the fabric of our society. It shows up in language, in the way that we use words, the way that we use symbols. It shows up in policies. It shows up in what is considered to be normal or common sense. So critical theorists are interested in how power operates through those mechanisms and how it might be challenged. So why might a PhD researcher use critical theory? There are loads of reasons, especially if your research is rooted in an issue around social justice or you're wanting to challenge existing power dynamics. If your project draws attention to the experiences of marginalised groups, explores how systems work against particular people, or questions the way that things are normally done, then critical theory might be quite a natural fit for your research. Let's say you're researching how students from working class backgrounds experience higher education. How do they experience universities? A descriptive approach might just map out their experiences, but a critical approach would go further. It might ask how the university system is set up to privilege certain ways of speaking or behaving or thinking, and how that affects students who don't come from traditional academic backgrounds. The same goes for work in areas like policing, migration, media, health, welfare, anywhere where systems of power and inequality are at play. Critical theory gives you a toolkit to name those patterns, to understand them, and to suggest alternatives. Before we get on to the next thing, I want to hear from you in the comments. Are you using critical theory in your research? Are you thinking about using it? Are you a seasoned critical theorist? Can you share some tips and advice with other people who are thinking about using it? Get typing in that comment box and we can all geek out together. So what does research that is grounded in critical theory actually look like? It's often qualitative, but not always. Because what makes it critical isn't the method. It's not about the individual techniques that you are using to gather and to analyse data. It's about the stance that you're taking. It's about your positioning. It's about where you're coming from. And that will have an influence on how you frame your research questions, the kinds of data you collect, and how you interpret your results. You'll often see quite a strong focus on reflexivity. And that's where researchers are quite open about their role in the research process, about the impact of them on the research process and some of the things that they're doing to acknowledge that. And there's often a desire not just to understand the world, but to challenge it and to change it. So recommendations for policy, recommendations for practice, those are quite common in this kind of work. You might also find that research in this area really centralises the voices of marginalised groups who are often unheard when you look at the mainstream narratives. And one thing I want to be really, really clear about here is that the aim isn't to give these people a voice because they've already got one, but it's to create space for their voice, for their perspective to be heard, and for those voices and perspectives to be taken seriously in the research context. And the focus isn't on problematising people. It's about looking at how systems and processes and procedures might have disadvantaged them, might be actively working against them. So isn't critical theory the same as things like feminist theory, critical race theory, queer theory, critical realism? They're related, but they're not exactly the same. Think of critical theory as a broad umbrella, and then underneath that, you've got more specific approaches like feminist theory, critical race theory, post-colonial theory, queer theory. And each of these focuses on a particular form of inequality, and it brings its own tools and perspectives to the table. But they're all grounded in the same belief. The world is not neutral, that power matters, and that research can and should challenge systems of oppression. So if you're already working with one of those more specific theories, you're already engaging with critical theory, with the critical tradition. You don't have to label it critical theory for it to count. And it is also worth noting that critical theory and critical realism are not the same thing either. Now, both of these things are concerned with understanding deeper layers of reality. Critical realism is much more focused on uncovering the mechanisms that cause things to happen, even if those mechanisms aren't visible. Critical theory, on the other hand, is more concerned with power, ideology, social change. It asks not just what's going on beneath the surface, but who benefits from it and how it might be challenged. What if you feel a little bit unsure about using critical theory? Honestly, that's normal. Critical theory can feel quite overwhelming at first, not least of all because of all the terminology and all of the jargon that comes along with it. And partly because it's asking you to take a stance on something, and that can feel quite risky, especially in academia, especially if you've come from an institution or a tradition that really values detachment and objectivity and being a neutral observer. It can feel really uncomfortable to be openly political, openly values driven in your research. But here's the thing. All research has values behind it. Critical theory just makes those values explicit. And remember, with critical theory, you don't need to know everything. You just need to be willing to reflect on your position, question those everyday common sense taken for granted assumptions, and think critically about the structures and the systems that you're researching. And critical theory can be a really powerful lens to use in your PhD research, not because it gives you all the answers, but it encourages you to ask better questions. It challenges you to dig deeper, to question what's normal, and to consider how what you're doing, how your research can actually lead to positive change in the world. And you don't need to be an expert in Marx or write a 100-page critique of capitalism to use critical theory. You just need to stay curious, be reflective, and be brave enough to challenge the other things that people just take for granted. If you're into all things theory and paradigms, you might want to go and check out the playlist that's appearing on your screen right now. It is full of videos on paradigms, on conceptual frameworks, on theoretical frameworks, all of that good stuff. So if that sounds like it's your jam, go and grab some snacks and I'll see you in there.